I am Mike Taylor. I am a senior UX content designer at Equifax / Count and Equifax company, I believe. And I also used to be the Hackfort director last year, and then an assistant director of Hackfort 5 years before that, or 4 or 5 years before that. So I obviously really like Hackfort, maybe a little too much. And you know, this panel, when Raymond asked me to moderate, I initially rolled my eyes because it's another AI panel. Like last year, I was sick of AI, like talking about it and going to things about it. And then, you know, even more so this year, but it's not that I'm not interested in it, or, you know, like I'm very interested in it. And however, I thought this panel should be less about like the science of AI and AI development per se, and more like some implications from different industries and different perspectives. Because now I believe we're at a point where a lot of us are using it or incorporating it in a lot of our daily lives. And so that's kind of why this panel exists. And we have on the panel, on my left, starting with Joseph Haskin. Joseph is a time-based artist working in new media art, specializing in immersive and interactive installations. He views his creations as journeys of exploration, carefully translating these exploits into captivating encounters for the audience. He invites viewers to engage not only with the aesthetic dimensions of his art, but also with the underlying philosophical and scientific concepts that fuel his creativity. And a lot of his work you can see in the interactive space in the ballroom at Hackfort. And then Nicole Winters is head of growth for the US at Ryff, an AI-powered in-scene advertising company, revolutionizing brand integration at scale. She's a seasoned sales and marketing executive. She has over 15 years experience in branded entertainment, advertising, and content creation. In 2017, she co-founded, Lucia Entertainment, a full-service production company. Nicole has developed and produced innovative digital content, including Go Green, a clean energy series featuring Mark Ruffalo and Don Cheadle. She has led campaigns for brands like Netflix, 20th Century Fox, Dell, Amazon, Diageo. Yeah, that's embarrassing.
Liquor brands.
With activations at South by Southwest. Psh, what do they know? Sorry. The Emmys and the Oscars. Wow, okay. And then finally, we have Ciske van Oosten, who is the head of global business intelligence at Verizon Business Group, Cyber Security Solutions Division. He is an industry visionary and innovator with 35 years experience as an analyst, systems thinker, thought leader, trusted advisor, writer, transformational conversationalist. That is true.
You thought the Oscars were impressive.
He leads the research, data science, writing, and publication of a series of cybersecurity publications, including the Verizon Payment Security Report, the leading global research publication on payment security. He's a strong advocate of sustainable control, effectiveness, and decision-making skills, and an antidote to data compromises. In 2002, Ciske developed the precursor to the payment card industry data security standard, PCI DSS, and the largest private industry initiated compliance regulation worldwide. He also created and led the first qualified security assessor organization worldwide. He's a very impressive man. So to kick things off, just real quick, AI is such a broad term, and that's kind of on purpose for this panel. We're going to be talking, think about large language models and neural networks and machine learning, probably stable diffusion, which is one of those types of AIs. So I think we'll be pretty general mostly, but I'll bet we're going to be talking about LLMs a lot of the time too, or mostly. But if not, maybe we'll distinguish which type we're talking about. So to kick things off,
Should I show the video?
Oh yes, actually, Ryff actually, to make things simpler to explain what Ryff is it?
Yeah, it's, I think, queued up.
It's queued up? Okay.
Yeah. This is a video of what we do, and then I'll explain where the AI comes in and talk with.
Well, I don't know, Connie. I've never declawed kittens before. How many? 8?
As you're looking at this,
well, all
try
right,
to
just bring them by the camper
choose
this week and I'll
what
see what I can do.
product was
I'm not
inserted
going to charge you.
virtually
Just bring
into
them
the
by and I'll see
scene.
what I can do.
Excuse me. I'm here to see a Walter Hobbs.
One of those
I'm Buddy the
products
Elf.
was not there. and
You
Ryff
look
inserted that
hilarious.
virtually
Who
using
sent
AI
you?
to scan
Papa
and insert
Elf.
that.
Papa Elf?
Hmm? From the North Pole.
From the North Pole?
Yes.
So you really think we should ship them?
No. You look like you came from the North Pole.
That's exactly where I came from. Santa must have called you.
Oh, yeah, sure. He just got off the cell phone with me.
You did?
So, go on.
It was the whiskey.
The whiskey.
The second kind of part of the video gave it away. But just to add on what I do in AI, which is very different than I think why all of you are here, is really transforming the advertising and marketing landscape to become more efficient. So as entertainment producers, people that are content creators, which we all are, trying to create efficiencies in marketing dollars. So what Ryff does is we virtually insert product that wasn't there, either in catalog content like Elf that gets redistributed every year and people watch that. And then the production companies, the networks, the streamers, the content creators can then also remonetize this content. So what the AI does, it scans that 1 minute piece, and it will inform exactly the best placement within that content to be recognized, have positive brand affinity. We have guardrails to know, hey, that's not a good placement, or hey, that's not a good brand. So those eyeballs are in the content rather than around them, because we all know right now we're sick of advertising. We're sick of ads. We're going on platforms to not pay for ads. So this is a way to create efficiency in what I do for a living, which is brand integration.
That's interesting. So the use of AI for Ryff is like you're finding these experiences without like necessarily the need for humans to review, every scene in an old series or episode, and it's elevating, it's essentially being able to produce a large scale marketing efforts at massive scales.
Yeah, essentially it's creating more inventory. And it is elongating the industry's opportunity to make money beyond just the production. So when you produce content, it stops. And then if you have to integrate a brand, you have to do the deal up front. It's cumbersome. There's a lot of deal making. I've done this before for my own show. Also, if you miss a placement, you have to go back and reshoot, which is time and money. So what you can do is actually efficiently use the AI to insert the product virtually. And our co-founder is from NVIDIA. He launched the UK office of NVIDIA, so we have the best tech. That's why probably in the first scene, you might not have known it was a Jameson bottle until that second scene happened. So
So you might
Yes.
not even, at the time of shooting, you might not even know what brand deals will come in the future.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay. Joseph, I have to ask, do you see AI as more of a collaborator or a tool? And explain your reasoning. I don't know.
Well, you know, it's interesting. It kind of depends on how you approach it and what you're using it for. A lot of we've done installations where we've taken AI models, large language models, and essentially collaborated with them by training them to aid us with what we're trying to produce. For example, we had a production that was about the interpretation of dreams, and so we'd ask the AI to interpret dreams and then play them back as a script for us. And in that case, we kind of considered it a collaborator. I think using it as a tool, oftentimes, I think they're being used both in creative outlets and artistic outlets. I think they're used creatively in a sense that like it is pushing content out that is both new and innovative, something nobody's seen before, but also bringing something in that's a bit more conscious of subject matter. It's a bit more collaborative with the AI. We're not quite to a point where we're having these discussions back and forth with AI because AI is not a conscious being yet. We'll talk about, kind of going into AGI and getting into those places. At that place, I think it would be considered more of a collaborator and more of something, you would see a kind of a Tony Stark-esque kind of landscape playing out. But right now, I think it's more of a tool, and it's a tool no different than any other new technology. It's no different than a paintbrush. It's kind of how you use it and what you do with it that is going to create the content and going to really color the views you're trying to express.
Yeah, nice. Okay, that you mentioned AGI, and that I gotta ask Ciske. How big of an impact is AI making or will make really, do you think? Are we on the verge of inventing God, or is it more glorified autocorrect?
Now, I can go quite deep in this, so I don't know how many rabbit holes we want to dive into, but you'll have to stop me if I go too long. But
I'll try.
I think if we start by, if we've asked the same question, what would, just go back 30 years with the commercialization of the internet. If you've asked the same question and said, what would the impact be of the internet? I mean, we could not have foreseen the ways in which we use the internet. We could not have foreseen that it would be so normal just to read millions of books, to listen. I mean, I'll get to streaming services later, don't let me forget that one. But for example, the way in which we book our vacations, the way in which we do remote working. So we know that AI is transformative. We know that it is here to stay. It's not, even though we've been through an AI winter. I don't even know if people know that concept, but for example, the winter started in 1974 because there were so many hype cycles. When AI is not new, it goes back to, you can go all the way back to, I told you I'm going to go deep on this, but if I go too deep, like 1946 with Alan Turing, and then the terminology of AI was defined in Hanover, in Dartmouth Medical University, with that paper in 1946. And then from there on, a lot of people will say chatbots, it's fairly new, it's maybe, and we know that there are leaps in technology with transformers. That paper, All You Need Is Attention, from Google in 2017, and BERT following in 2018. But you had a chatbot in 1966 called Eliza, which wasn't really AI. I mean, we talk about, a lot of people also use the term AI, where we actually mean machine learning. Yeah. But, so it's really double-edged sword. We know that it is incredible. We don't know yet. Just as we don't know what the impact was with the internet, and we didn't know, for example, today, we're not going to say, let's read maps, we will use GPS.
I think that's, to go back to my earlier thing about me being sick of talking about AI, I think that's why, like, it's inherently unsatisfying in the end to me when there's not a clear answer, you know, like, then it's like, why are we even talking about it? You know, like, but
Yeah,
I know, and that's really reductive, I know, of the whole thing, but there isn't like any one person I have come across that knows what's going to happen. And, you know,
Yeah, artificial human intelligence, we don't call it artificial machine intelligence because it is already synthetic, it is artificial. But I mean, you can make predictions. When I write my scientific publications also, and I've got a lot of analysts interviewing me afterwards, and the one thing that we don't do is we don't make hard predictions. For example, if you know the Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report or the Panelists Security Report, but you do look at patterns, you can see patterns, and that's a lot what AI is about as well. You can see patterns. And just like if you're standing on a railway track, you know that the train is not going to swerve left or right. It's going to hit you if you stay on the track. It's pretty obvious. So I think in that same way, we can see with AI, it is disruptive. There's this incredible opportunity, and we should focus on the opportunities and not have FOMO, fear of missing out, jumping in first and then experiencing the multitudes of lawsuits. I mean, we can talk about that every month, but it's avoidable. It's a technology that can be used in the entire session. This session is about responsible use and ethics. So we can go into that quite a bit.
that's a great segue too. Nicole, I know it's something you've talked about, the ethical use of AI and power consumption, and it's a problem, I think. Like, I don't know if everyone realizes exactly how much goes into that. So what are your thoughts on?
Well, I'm a little bit of an anomaly because I did create a show called Go Green, which is an eco-conscious renovation home show that's showing people that every solution matters. I only can control what I can control.
Yeah.
AI is going to, just like you said, it's coming. So we don't know the future of the carbon footprint that AI is going to do. All we can do is see maybe there is opportunity for AI to maybe help or be solutions driven. So, I think we talked about this early on, is not focusing on what we can't control and being negative about it instead of leaning into it and saying, okay, this might be a negative thing, the computing power. My friend Annie right here, we talk about it all the time because we are conscious about that, but it's a tool for us to be more efficient and do our jobs and make money and create jobs and create opportunities. So what do you want to lean into? Is my perspective. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I can add to that. It was interesting when we had a conversation and we met the panelists before, as Nicole mentioned, is that there's so much. It ties back to your question about how do we remain productive with AI and not dive straight into the fear and the hype. And as you mentioned about the circle of concern, what I mentioned when we had these earlier panel discussions is the three circles. You have your circle of control, which is the smallest circle, things that you actually have control over. And then you have your circle of influence, things that you can influence, but you may not have complete control over it. And then the largest circle is your circle of concern, things that you can be concerned about. And there's so much that we can have fear about the technology that exists. And it can go both ways. For example, if we think about, we used to go and rent movies from Blockbusters, and the business model was late fees. If you don't return it on time, you get late fees. And Netflix started, and Netflix offered to be bought by $50 million, 50 billion actually be, 50 billion, I think it was, no, it wasn't billion, it was million, $50 million, which was like less than 3% of the operating budget of Blockbusters. And we know what happened is that they decided, no, we're not going to do streaming. Our business model is sound. We're just going to continue to charge people late fees. Whereas Netflix rented out DVDs. It wasn't streaming back then, but no late fees. And what happened by 2010? Blockbusters filed for liquidation and they were out of business. And it's not as if they didn't know about the technology that exists and didn't know about the potential, but they just couldn't see the impact. And I think in the same way, is if you stay focused on how do you add value and actually address real business problems within your circle of control and maybe within your circle of influence, it's fine to be concerned about all of the challenges, and we need to, because we don't also do not want to step into a situation where there will be a lot of finger pointing in the future as well. Hopefully at a small scale where AI does something really strange and unpredictable, and people will blame AI and say, the AI did it. And then other people will say, no, it's the people who trained it. Maybe we should blame them. But that is avoidable if we just remain focused and actually apply logical thinking to it. And then we can talk about that at some point as well. We can go quite deep, is how do you actually address AI personally and from a commercial, from a corporate perspective? What are the mental models that you can apply to avoid falling into the traps?
Yeah, honestly, I think we should get into audience questions soon, but I want to ask one more time.
She like really wants to like
Oh, yeah.
ask a question. She's
I know.
here.
This is my last question, I promise. I want to know, Joseph, if you've had, like, what's some unexpected outcomes you maybe have had while incorporating AI into your art? I imagine you haven't always used AI, and so, like, is there anything unexpected you've discovered about yourself or your art or anything that you can think of?
Well, AI is an interesting tool to use. It's evolved in such a long way. I mean, when it first started, from a creative standpoint, using the earlier models of Stable Diffusion, they were very much based off of like the stolen work of artists without their permissions, and everybody's pretty familiar with that case. That's come a long way. You know, there are some models that are supposedly ethically sourced, you know, from paid for content. Adobe boasts that, though a lot of what they have is stock, and a lot of what they produce just looks like stock. However, Stable Diffusion, literally when it came out, you could write in an artist's name as a prompt and get their exact style out and get exactly what they've been producing. And so it's, why would I go pay $500 for this person to do a portrait when I can prompt AI with their name, with their style, with the time that they created, you know, and really get a really refined and quick a quick outcome. And so that's been a really big problem in the creative community, but it has been pushed aside because there's so many other things, like they talked about, the ecological impact that it has, these server houses that take up so much power. And I think a lot of those concerns have maybe surprised me and affected how I've approached using AI in some of my work, how I've approached creating installations. And when I use AI in my work, generally it's because I want people to have a conversation about AI. And a lot of these conversations become so contentious and people at each other's throats that I try to create an environment where we can have a conversation, where we can talk and see both sides of the coin and where we need to go. Because as Nicole said earlier, it's coming, it's here, and it's gonna continue to go. So it's, where do we take it from here? And if we're aware of these things, you know, we can at least prepare. We can prepare, be thoughtful, be aware of the concerns. So many people didn't know how much power this sucked up, and then that power was even an issue. You know, we don't usually think of server houses as a big ecological footprint, but they do have one, and it's becoming quite substantial, and it's continuing to grow. And so as this grows, we need to be mindful of that and where we take it.
Yeah. Okay, and with that, is anyone out there have any questions for any of our panelists? I think I am the mic runner, so I'll do the closest first because that's the least effort for me.
Okay. Hi. Well, we were talking about ethics, which is one of my favorite topics, ethics and AI. But I'm listening to the values that you're expressing, like efficiency, which is a value, but it's not a moral value. That's an individual value, right? I mean, it can be economical, but moral would be social responsibility and collegiality, how we treat each other. And so I want to kind of direct it towards that. And also in that finger pointing in the future, who's responsible? The AI, the developer, the user? And how do we take a moral view on what's happening? Thank you.
Who wants that one?
The smartest one over there. The artist or the smartest?
No, I think we need to have a balanced view also between art.
Good question.
Yeah, morality within art, within copyright. I mean, it's a wide conversation. And I mean, where to start? Do we start with where do we get morals? And then we quickly go into consciousness, and then before you know it, you go all the way to the creator. So that's deep. But in terms of talking about moral, we know that those principles existed many years ago where they said for robotics, because AI and robotics is going to come together at some point, because people want to use AI to do other leisure work or other work that they can do. So, and the first rule was do no harm for robotics, and the same with AI. And I think we have that attempts across the industry. You have the EU AI Act, you have Colorado, you've got New York State, you've got so many different states in the United States that have enacted AI laws. We also try to say, how do we manage this? And obviously, the least efficient partner, the government, will get involved and say, let's legislate. And you cannot really legislate the problem away, can you? So, as you say, where do you point the finger in terms of, is it you cannot really blame the user if AI is doing something wrong, and do you train the trainers who fine-tuned it? And where do you draw the lines? I mean, we had a conversation about, because I don't really talk about that much about AGI, but it continuously getting general intelligence, and what does it mean? What does it mean to reason? How do you get from a chain of thought to a tree of thought? And how close are we to that? It's a long answer, but I mean, we are moving into the chips, because what needs to happen with that, or I need to save that for later, is the computing power, the electricity, etc. But part of morality is also the electricity consumption. But before we go into that rabbit hole, we know that AI has been weaponized already by militaries, and that was the one thing that they said they're not going to do, and within years, money talks. So the same questions at a very destructive level will also say, what happens if an AI makes a decision and a hospital gets blown up, and they say, the soldiers will say, well, it wasn't us, it was the AI. And is it really? I mean, is it our human potential to see it's about correlation, cause and effect? That's the one thing that AI is struggling with. It cannot really distinguish between causation and correlation. And there are many examples of that. So I don't want to go too deep in that, but we can have that conversation. It's about, until we fix the inherency of the limitations of AI, just speaking broadly, we're actually talking about machine learning and what we do, whether it's a convolutional neural network or whether we're going to go into spike neural networks, which is actually where we're heading, where we can break the computation power. Well, just before I hand over the mic, is in terms of the ecological issues that we have. We have the largest AI data center at the moment. Many of you may know that, in Memphis, that Elon Musk created for XAI. So it started off with 100,000 of the best NVIDIA AI GPU chips. I think it's the H100s. So the computational power, there was a lot of batteries that needed, Tesla batteries, etc. But how much power does it take to run that center? So if you compare just briefly, let's just go down that rabbit hole. How much power does it take the human mind? The human brain is 20 watts. And we have how many neurons? Between 86 billion to 100 billion neurons, and then about 100 trillion synapses, which are all connected with axons. So I'm not going to go too deep into the biological way. But the point, just to get to the point, is that if you compare that, the biggest data center in AI consumes 91 million watts, 91 megawatts. And and it's about 400 people's brain power, 400 people at the moment, whereas a human being will use 100 watts. Now we run much slower. I mean, a human being runs at 10 hertz, not kilohertz, just hertz, your brain. Whereas computational power is 5,000 times that, because it runs into kilohertz, the chips. I'm not going to go too deep, but you can ask me afterwards, because I've really looked at where we are, where we're going in terms of what we need to do to mimic the brain with biological chips, which we have. IBM True North, Intel's Loihi is the two chips that have 1 million neurons, synthetic neurons, and 250 million synapses. and it uses only 1 watt of power. But if you have to scale it up, the human brain from one human is still exponentially bigger. So just from that perspective, I know it's a very long answer, but you have to combine the two to also understand if we're going to solve AI and bring in morality, we will really have to think about carefully the speed of the technology, which is still 5 to 10 years out at the minimum for AGI. There was a presidential AI committee in the US, and they've asked 477 AI experts, not the people who get paid, Sam Altman, et cetera, but even Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, said to reach AGI is going to take several thousand days. You can think about that's fairly vague. 1,000 days is like 3 years. And if there are 3 times that, it's still 10 years. But that just testifies we are at least at the quickest 10 years out. But just to conclude, when Go, the game of Go, which is much more complex than chess, in 2016, the expert in Go, the world champion, was beat by AI. And that happened 10 years earlier than expected. So in the same way, when we think it may take 10 years for AGI, we may just be surprised. Who knows?
Nice. Okay. Any other questions? Unless you want to answer that? Sorry.
I think you talked about multiple stages of where do we place the blame, who do we point the finger at, and I think it's important that it's addressed at all stages. You know, it is the user, it is the company who built it, it is the ones who trained the model. You know, it's not just the person who shot the gun, it's the gun manufacturer, it's the marketer, it's the people who kicked them off the land and mined the iron ore. You know, it's all these decisions that get up to that place. And I think if we don't stop it, I think it's one of those things that none of us like to take responsibility. None of us want to take responsibility for all these things, but we kind of have to demand responsibility at all different levels if we truly want to be ethical with the use of these different tools.
Yeah.
Keep the mic up there if you want to.
Oh, and there's a recording. They like this.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem.
I used to run this thing, so I know.
I think I ran it 1 year before you.
Oh yeah. Well, there's a long list now.
This is a question more on the innovation and impact side, and in considering your comments about 10 years and later, in the next 3 to 5 years, is there anything that excites anybody on the panel in terms of like what they're looking forward to see from an innovation standpoint or an impact standpoint?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. The reason why I'm at Ryff, I took this job and I never thought I would ever be talking on a tech panel, let alone AI, because I come from marketing, traditional advertising, and entertainment, is the use of technology in industries for innovation and efficiencies. So for example, in the world of advertising, when you see something, that's paid for and that's sold. But really, are those efficient eyeballs? Are you looking? Are you paying attention? We can go to the Morale Road. They're selling you something that you're not even seeing. So for me, it actually, in terms of like personal alignment and innovation, is the advertiser, the brand, the product is being seen because we know you're watching content that you like, that you have positive brand affinity to. A good example of this, were the Olympics. So Toyota paid $10 million, to get a sponsorship for like the beach volleyball. Well, you're watching it and I'm super into it. I'm like, match point, but then they're serving me this ad but it's still going on. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, and I'm getting angry. So do you think Toyota would be happy with that reaction from what they're paying to do? Do you know? So the AI is actually helping our industry be efficient for the viewer, be efficient for the brand, and be efficient for the content creator. So we're all working in the same ethos.
That does sound.
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
It does sound like a little like a more consumer-friendly approach than obtrusive ads. But I said I wouldn't give my opinions. All right. Sorry, I just had to walk.
Okay, so AI, I know for big business and big marketing and whatnot, but for right now, do you believe that it's leveling the playing field for just the average person? Because in the last month, I mean, I've been doing Chat GPT and things like that, but I've jumped into AI Studio and Gemini Advanced, and I'm having a blast. And I'm creating, and I'm doing graphic art, and I'm doing things. I'm starting to code because it's encouraging me to code. Things that I would have never done a year ago, because I've got this partner that I can go live stream, and it can follow me along my stream, my desktop, and be my tutor and tell me how to do the things that I want to do. So for the little guy, do you think this is a tool that can really help them be part of an industry that they never were part of before?
I think that's really one of the great and amazing things about it, is that it does open opportunity for those things. I think as long as it stays, or as long as it gets democratized effectively, there's a lot of models that become proprietary, a lot of companies that put a lot of money into production. Video models, there's a lot of, there was just a actors strike more recently, and this is post the earlier writer's strike. And this one was to use their likeness, and to take that in. And so it's nice to have that advantage that a little studio could maybe make something that generally you'd need millions of dollars to make. But some of them are keeping these proprietary models and not allowing them out to the public. And so if the models are trained on our data, if they're trained on something they're seeing around from us or grabbing from us, then yeah, they should be democratically, distributed through all of us, so that we can continue to evolve and advance and use them in that great way. And I think that's a really exciting thing. I have some friends who are video makers, and some of them are even holding out on animation, because they're like, I want to see where this is going and see if I'm just going to spend the next 5 years of my life, doing frame by frame, or am I just going to be prompting, and which way am I going to be going? And so taking someone who has all these creative ideas but maybe doesn't have the resources to make it happen, I think that's a really great thing to have. So I think it's just important to keep in mind that, things that are trained on all of our data, things that we're all putting into, we should all get something out of. It should come back.
I can add onto it if you want. I mean, because if your question is real on an individual level, how much can AI use? And there are so many different examples of how it can really transform your potential. Because I mean, it is incredible what we have at our fingertips, where you can just really digest a library in seconds. And earlier last week, I just uploaded an entire publication, and it made a podcast in 3 minutes. So if you think about this David and Goliath type of potential that you have, we had the Oscars, Academy Awards, I think the Oscars like 3 weeks ago. And which movie won, because we were just talking about animation, which movie won the best animation? It had 2 nominations. I mean, most of you may know Flow. The movie Flow won an Oscar. A small company in Latvia, a Baltic country, so tiny, against Hollywood, but yet it is the country's first Oscar that it won, and it's completely animated. I didn't know it was AI. People just said, watch Flow. And I said, isn't that I see it on Amazon Prime, this little cat image. And I was like, watch it. And at the moment I opened it, I immediately thought, well, this must be AI. Because, I mean, for those of us that are a bit older, we remember what it was like to see Toy Story. And you go like, wow, look at the graphics. And now we just had another Toy Story moment where you watch a movie like Flow, completely AI generated, and it is just generational ahead of what we are used to. So from that perspective, that David and Goliath story, where you can use AI in an incredible way to achieve absolute magnificent results, absolutely.
Can I add to that real quick? Yeah. And to that, even though it's all AI, like there's still human interaction layered on top of that. You know what I mean? creatively. Like you can't just rely 100% on AI, you know? So just to add to the creativity that they're both talking about and the world I live in is I don't think we should ever think like it's taking away from our input into the AI. It's only adding to.
The human in the loop. It's always the human in the loop at all areas. I mean, even from my perspective in cybersecurity, you cannot remove the human element from the people make such leaps of faith and expectations to say it's completely AI driven. And as you say, whether it's creative, whether it's movies, whether it's art, the human in the loop. I'm often asked also, what is the impact of AI, for example, on jobs and the cybersecurity? And one of the answers are interesting to say, well, you can use AI tremendously. Who knows where we will be in 5 or 10 years? But AI will be like that junior partner that makes so many mistakes, that continuously messes up and that just doesn't have the human experience. And we've seen the same inflated expectations with self-driven cars. Elon Musk said, well, here's Tesla, it's going to be self-driving, and to some extent it is. But at what cost? There's been so many accidents or so, and we know that we have to go through pain to realize the full potential and things are going to go wrong. But just the one thing that I want, well, that's one of the questions that you said is what is the one thing that you want to know about AI is truly understand the limitations. For example, if a plastic bag flows across the road and there's no wind, you will know as a human being, well, you don't have to hit the brakes. It's just going to float over the car. It's not going to go straight through the windshield. AI doesn't know that because the training is so much involved. It doesn't know the density. It cannot intuitively, like human beings, deduct, well, unless there's something heavy in the bag, it's not going to be floating there. So even an umbrella, if an umbrella blows out of somebody's hand and it goes in front of your car, AI will hit the brakes and go like, oh my goodness, I'm about to hit something solid. We will know as human beings intuitively, it's just going to bounce off, relax, don't hit the brakes too hard. So just clear examples of how AI are like babies. They don't know the world, they don't understand it. We need to feed them and teach them and grow them, and who knows what they will grow up. And that's the morality question. If we are the parents of AI, we better be sure to teach them moral values and get the right input. Otherwise, we're going to have juvenile delinquents soon, and people, who knows?
Okay, Sandy.
Yeah, I you guys know that. I'm being really, I'm not being good. I'm being very quiet back here. So a couple things on just to give you guys something to think about. I'm completely pro AI, you know, and I'm an AI optimist. You know, think about the being able, so many jobs today, like being an influencer is a job. So before, if you wanted to actually be, you know, get your music in front of people, you guys have heard the stories about what happened with Elvis or the Beatles, you know, all of these people who the only way to get on the radio was you had to go get a record promoter and they stole the money from these poor people and stuff. Now, today, people can get on YouTube, get a following, do. So there's a lot of ways that we've watched this technology actually enable other people and create new jobs and do all of those type of things. My only comment, you know, and again, I spend, you know, Ciske and I are old friends, or I spend a lot of time thinking about this. When we start talking about ethical, then you have to start, so what's ethical for me? So the company I work with, we actually do AI red teaming. So in Saudi Arabia, you know, it is worse to say something against the royal family than to say that you beat your wife. You know, so what's ethical is very, you know, I'm saying we can say that we all want a world where everyone is treated well and is their best selves. I'm just saying that to get there is going to be a difficult path. What is bias? What is truth? History was written by the winners. We know that, right? That's, you know, so we have a lot of, what is intelligence? What are these things? So I'm just saying that, you know, let's all agree that we do want a world where, you know, it's wonderful, but it's very difficult. And the other thing, you know,
You're here. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Did you?
Yeah, you're right.
Anyone else?
It's like, you know me.
I think we help each other.
Can I do two?
Yeah.
Or am I going to get in trouble?
Yes, you are. One allowed. And brief. One sentence.
I'll brief. Nicole and Ciske, so we've talked about the idea that AI is not going to replace jobs, but we've also heard this come up quite a bit. From where I stand, I feel like they're not mutually exclusive. I feel like at the same time that I don't think a lot of jobs are going to be void, they're essentially going to evolve. There's also this idea of a globalized economy in the developing world. I'm curious if you could speak about how it's not necessarily the folks in this room that are going to be losing their jobs, but translation services, generating stock illustrations and things like that. Those jobs are the ones that are being automated, and potentially we could see a situation where those are the people that are losing their jobs.
That job sucked. Well, maybe they get better. You want to go first? I can answer just from my point of view. My point of view, and my husband's not here. I don't know where he is. He's supposed to be here. Where are you? Oh, hi. I'll use him for an example. He's a writer producer in the industry, and working at my company and using AI to integrate products that weren't maybe able to be integrated. For example, if you don't have a physical product like a water bottle, how are you going to put a poster? So now we can bring in money and opportunities for content creators like my husband to boost development. So for our industry right now, it's really changed. I mean, people are losing their jobs left and right because advertising's down, development's down. So we're looking at Ryff to boost marketing and creativity to help content creators monetize, to bring in more dollars through innovation and the AI and the marketing that we're using, if that makes sense. I know that's an answer like your global question, but I do feel that it's a marketing tool that then can expand into the job force in a multitude of industries.
Absolutely. I think in terms of how disruptive it will be, we cannot imagine that quite yet. Of course, I don't like to reason by analogy, but I would like to give you two analogies. We should reason by first principles, actually. And it is hard with a technology that is so unpredictable. But 200 years ago, most people would have worked on farms, and they could not have imagined not working on farms now we are all office workers, and we couldn't have imagined working remotely until the pandemic hit to a large degree. But that's one analogy, and it doesn't mean that it gives you a useful answer, but the intent there is to know is that AI can be incredibly disruptive in the short term, where, as you say, jobs can be replaced, but you can transform and you can do something else. But to give you another analogy, when the automatic teller machine, the ATM, was invented and it got out on the street in 1983, it was in the United States and in the UK and in other countries, bank tellers feared for their jobs. And they said, well, people are not going to come in and draw money. And did that happen? Well, to some degree, yes, there was a reduction. But are there more bank tellers today? Absolutely. And if we look why, well, there are a lot more banks in the United States. But you don't go into the bank to withdraw cash because you can do so much more. Well, in the US, you may still go to an automatic teller machine. And a lot of the world is cashless. If you go to Norway, if you go to Netherlands, where I'm from, you don't even do that anymore. But the fact is, you're still going to the bank for specialized services. And there's a lot more bank tellers. So I think in that way, AI gives us the opportunity to transform and do a lot of other different things and hand over the repetitiveness and the repetitive task and things that can be automated to AI. And let's go through this 5 to 10 to 15 year transformation. Hopefully by that time I will be retired and I don't have to worry about this anymore. But at least embrace almost like they say in the Marines, embrace the suck. So embrace the opportunity where AI is going to be very disruptive, but let's try to do it responsibly. As Sandy said as well, it's like there is a lot of things that can go wrong and we don't know yet. But at least we have examples from the past, like bank tellers, and there's a lot more. Typesetting got replaced completely. There are jobs that will go lost, and we shouldn't kid ourselves. AI will replace certain industries completely, just like typewriting and word processing changed things. I mean, if you go way back, there used to be a person inside an elevator, like literally pulling ropes and getting you to the right floor. We don't think about that today because you just step in and press floor 3 and you just go there. That job is gone. Nobody's going to pay somebody really, unless it's a really high-class hotel, to stand inside. So I think in the same way, we're going to realize that AI can perform certain jobs so much better, so much quicker, and there's no need to replace it with a human being. But until then, we need to stay involved and make sure that it happens responsibly.
All right, I believe we are at time. It flew by. So I think.
I am hosting cocktails
Oh,
across the way at Acero for
Okay.
our panel. So if anybody wants to come, you're coming. Are you coming? He's probably working.
he's working.
But if you have any more questions and you want a drink, come chat with us over there, and we can continue the conversation. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Thank everyone from the panel, and definitely go check out Joseph's Sorry. So I don't work here, so I don't care. Yeah, because it's really, really amazing. So thank you all for coming and your interest and support in Hackfort, and enjoy Treefort Music Fest.